What's up, everybody? I had a request recently from a viewer to explain how you use MVVM in SwiftUI. So that's what we're going to look at here. So as we get started, for those of you who don't know, let's just quickly answer the question, what is MVVM? MVVM stands for Model View ViewModel. Now, when we break that down into the various parts, the model is our raw data, wherever that data may come from that we're going to use for our application. The view, of course, is the display for our application. So we will be displaying whatever we need to in the app. Maybe it's a date or some text, a picture, whatever it may be from our data. The view model sits in between those. The view model takes the data from the model and then sends it to the display. Now it sits in the middle so that we can do any translation. I'm going to give you an example in this video. What we're going to do is we're going to create a date time in our model, and we're going to need to change and format that in some way to be displayed in the way that we want it to be displayed. Now the idea here is that, as you can see, how does it work? The idea is that the model knows about itself and it has its data. The view model knows about the model and the view model takes the raw data from the model, translates it in some way, manipulates it however it needs to be, and then that is ready to be used by the display. The display can access the data directly from the model, but that really is not recommended and not really the way that's the whole point of MVVM, is the view really should talk to the view model to get its data. Now, why is that important? Well, because we want to have a source of truth, and the source of truth is going to be our model. Our view model manipulates that data to display it. The display may change that data in some way, and instead of changing it directly in the model, where it may need to be used for something else, the view is going to tell the view model to change the data, and then if need be, the view model, it takes the responsibility to update the data in the model. That way it keeps everything clean and you don't have to worry about everything being up to date and in sync, because it all follows this standard flow and process. There's other reasons for doing it as well, but that's in general concept, sort of the general terms, that's the way this works. So let's go ahead here and we're now going to do a demo. Okay, what I've got here is a new SwiftUI application. To save us some time, I've added some display items, and I'll explain what we've got those for and what they're going to do here. So I've got a vertical stack that I've created here, and I've got 4 text items, text labels if you want to call them that right now. There's a couple just for sort of showing you the different areas here. Obviously, normally, like I say, we wouldn't be using the data from the model, but I'm going to show it here so that you can understand what's going on and visually see the difference between the two. So I've got a title, model date, and then we will display that date from the model there. And then underneath, another title, model view date, and underneath there we will display the date from the view model. So what we're going to do is we're going to show the raw data here, the raw model, and then we're going to use the view model to change the format of that date time, and that's what we'll be displaying down here, which will show you the one coming from the view model so you can understand them both. So we're going to go ahead and get set up here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a couple of variables up here that I'm going to need, right? So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to say, create some state variables, and I'm going to have display my model date time, and this one is going to be a date, which is going to be equal, and I'll type this in here in a second, my model dot my date time, right? So let's go ahead and create that now, because it's going to complain because that doesn't exist. So I'm going to do this all in one file, but ordinarily I would imagine you probably have lots of files for this stuff, right? So we've got a new struct here, which I'm just going to call my model, and in there I'm just going to have a property. I'm going to have a static property because I don't need to instantiate it for this, and we're just going to set this up to be a new date timestamp here that gets created every time we run it. Of course, in your application this could be anything, right? It could be the model, could be an API call with some returns. some data from wherever, a picture, some audio, video, whatever it may be. But basically, I'm going to use a date timestamp here for simplicity of the model. So I'm just going to static let my model date time equal, and I'm just going to set it to the current date and time. Hopefully this should compile. Let's see, what have I got here? Oh, sorry, my model date time. Okay, so that's going to compile and be happy. Before we go any further, let's now display that down here. So we do that in line like so, and I'm just going to display that state variable, right? So this variable right here now is going to be displayed down here in the text, which is going to be this one right here. I'll hit resume, and there we go. So this is the raw date timestamp from our model. Well, that's great, and that's all well and good, and that's a source of truth there. But like I say, in our application, this is not the way we want to display it. That's why we're going to use a view model. So we're now going to build the view model down here and display this the way we would want this in our application. So again, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to create a new state here at state. And I'm going to call this one my view model. And this is actually going to be an instance of my view model. We're going to create that here now. Let's go down here, struct my view model. It's going to be very simple and very straightforward. That should get rid of the errors. Okay. Now let's go down here and take a look at what we need to do in our view model. So right now, what I can do, I can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to set up a variable. I'm going to call it formatted date time. And it's actually going to be the value from our struct here, right? So since this is, at the moment, what it's going to do is going to display the same thing. I'll explain it as we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a public function that we can call to get what we need here. So I'm going to call public func get my date time. Actually, let's call it get my formatted date time. It's not going to take any arguments there, any parameters. It is, however, going to return a string. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this up here just very quickly, very temporary, so you can see it before we get into the code to manipulate the data. I'm just going to return a new string, and I'm going to say the string, right? Just so we can satisfy what's needed for this function. Now up here, because I'm going to create an instance of my view model, I can now use that to display. So if I go back in here, change the displayed to my view model, and we're going to call that function, get my formatted date time. Okay. Let's go ahead, see if this compiles, and it does. Let's resume. Okay. So you can see that we're now returning this hard-coded string, the string down here. But what this tells me is I'm calling my instance of my view model, and this function's doing what it needs to do. But let's now make it do the right thing. So instead of returning a hard-coded string, of course, we actually want to take the data from our model, my model here. We want to format that in some way, which is why we're using a view model, and then return that to be displayed. Again, all of this so we don't have to touch the source of truth, which is the model data up here. Now, to do that, in this case, I need to use a date formatter. So I'm going to say let my date formatter equal a new instance of date formatter. Okay. And then I'm going to say my date formatter, and I need to give it the format that I wanted to display, right? Well, in this case, I want to display the months followed by the days followed by the years. Don't worry about this too much. Don't obsess about this. If you don't know what date formatter is, this is just my way of showing you I am changing the data from the model and returning it in the view model. All right. This could be anything. You could have a string and convert it to uppercase, lowercase, whatever it is. This is where you're actually doing the manipulation of the data in the view model. And then finally, I'm going to say let final string equal my date formatter string, and all I want it to do is apply this formatting here to be my formatted date time, which is the one that comes from the model, right? So I'll run through this again just quickly. Let's just get rid of all the errors here. Okay. So we're going to create, we've got our view model, which gets the data up here from the model, right? Formatted date time equals my model dot my model date time, right? Which is the current date time there. I've created a new date formatter that manipulates that data in some way. It's not changing the one in the model, it's just changing it here in the view model. And then finally, I'm creating a new string that says, okay, apply my date formatter to the data, all right? And then finally, I need to update this here and return the final date string. So this date string now is returned out of this function, and when I hit resume, hopefully, this should now show me the formatted date time. Let's go ahead and see if I get any errors. No, I don't, and here it is working. So you can see, here is the raw date time from the model, and then down here is the one with our formatter from our view model, okay? Now that's it. This is a very simple example, but this is how you set up to use view models in SwiftUI. And hopefully this makes sense to you. If it doesn't, please reach out, leave comments. But hopefully this answers the questions I was getting from you, from the viewers. Thank you so much for your questions. I hope this answers it, gives you an idea how you can go about doing this, reasons you might want to do this. And like I say, let me know in the comments, give it a thumbs up if this is helpful. It's very straightforward, but this applies to any level of complexity of MVVM that you want to do. Same principle, just to explain the concept for you. Thanks for watching. Go to compileswift.com or check out this channel. There's a whole bunch more stuff like this. Hope it helps. If you have anything else you'd like to see, like I say, I'm always taking notes from the comments for requests. This was one of them. I hope it helps you out. That's it. I'll see you in the next one.